In this video, we're going to have the beginning of geometry. And what we're going to be talking about in this video is right triangles. Now, before I get too far along, I want to make sure that you know how to use this mathematics chart. For most of the things you're going to do in geometry, your mathematics chart is going to give you the formulas that you need. As a matter of fact, there's a section right here on special right triangles that we'll talk about in one of the videos coming up. But we're going to talk about right triangles today. Make sure you use your mathematics chart to help you as much as possible along the way. Let's talk about right triangles. A right triangle is a triangle that's going to have a 90-degree corner. Now, the first thing that you need to keep in mind is that all angles of a triangle equal 180 degrees. Okay? So, if I'm going to have a right triangle, a right angle here is going to be 90 degrees. That means that if I'm going to get a total of 180, that these other two angles are going to have to add up to 90. So that 90 plus these two equal 180. Some triangles are 45, 45. So 45 and 45 is 90. Added to the other 90 gives you 180. There are some of them that's a special triangle. Here's another special triangle. Again, we'll do in greater detail in another video. A 60, 30, 90. 60 and 30 is 90. And 90 added together makes a 180. But it can be anything. This could be 58. And then you have to take your calculator and calculate the other part. So how do I do that? Well, if I know that 90 minus 58 has to be the other angle, then this one is 32 degrees. So it doesn't have to be 45, 45. It could be 58, 32, 90. They may not even be rounded off numbers. But just remember that all three have to add up to be 180 degrees total for that angle. Now, what I'm going to talk about specifically, other than the angles inside, is I'm going to talk about a triangle in which maybe you don't know how long one of the sides are. Now, this is a very typical question that you'll see on tax math tests. They give you a 90-degree angle, and they'll give you something like this. Let's say this is 15 miles long, and this is 36 miles long. And it'll say many times, not to scale. And what that means is the lines are not made exactly so that this is way longer. But they want to know something like, what is that distance? Anytime you have a right triangle and you need to know the length of the legs, then you can use what is called the Pythagorean Theorem. Pythagorean Theorem. And here's what it means. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Now what you need to know is that C squared is going to be the longest side. Okay? So it's going to be A, B, C. And so you can figure out what the length of that side is. So let's try that formula. I'm going to write it again over here. A squared plus B squared equals C squared. Now, what am I looking for? Well, I'm looking for C squared, so that means I have an A, so 15 squared, plus B, that's going to be this side here. I'm going to write the B there so it's easier to see. And B squared, so it says B squared, so that's going to be 36 squared equals C squared. So I already know two of the legs, that's what they call them of a triangle, two legs. I'm looking for the longest. Now, the longest, sometimes they throw this word out there, so I'm going to go ahead and write it down for you. Longest leg is called the hypotenuse. Hypotenuse. That's an interesting name, and so I want to make sure you've seen it just in case they ask you, how long is the hypotenuse? That's the longest leg. It's going to be always across from the 90-degree angle, so it's that long leg. So let's see if we can calculate this real quick. Well, I'm going to take my calculator, and I'm going to take 15 times 15, which is 15 squared, and that's 225. And then I'm going to clear my calculator, 36 times 36. 1,296. And that's going to equal c squared. So I squared that, there's the number, so I'm going to add them together. 1,296 plus 225. Grand total, 1,521 is equal to c squared. Now, the question is, how long is the hypotenuse? How long is c? I want to know how long that is, not c squared. So the opposite of square is square root. And I remember one of the very first videos we talked about doing opposites all the time. Whatever you do on one side, you do on the other. So the square root of a square just comes out c. So all I need is the square root, and I see on my calculator, I have a square root button right there. So square root of 1521 equals 39. There's my answer. So I got the answer for this triangle by using the Pythagorean theorem. Let's do one more. And it can be any triangle. Let's take one like this. Let's say this was 3 and this was 5, and I need to know side C. So this is A, B, C. Well, how did I know that was C? Well, sometimes even on the test question, they won't have C. They'll just put X, because you know in algebra a lot of times they use X. Well, C is the longest side, so I'm going to use the formula A squared plus B squared equals C squared. A squared is 3 squared. B squared is 5 squared equals C squared. So let's see. 3 times 3 is 9 plus 5 times 5 is 25. Well, again, use my calculator. 25 plus 9. Don't be scared to use your calculator. 34. So that's 34 equals C squared. Well, I'm going to take the square root of 34, so I can either look for this answer on the test, or I can take square root 34 and look for an answer close to 5.8. I can do either one, so it could be that answer or that answer, either one. Look for either one of those. Again, get your calculator to do the work for you. Just punch the numbers in, and it'll give you the answers that you possibly need. One more example. What happens if they don't ask you for C, they ask you for one of the legs? Okay, well, we can do that too, because we've already gotten pretty good at algebra. Let's do one like this. Here's a right triangle, and let's say this is 2.5, and let's say this is x, and let's say this is 7. And they want to know this side. Well, I know C. I can see that immediately. That's the long side. We'll just call this A and call this B. Does it matter which is which? The answer to that question is no. Doesn't matter which is A and B. It really matters which one is C. So I'm going to take A squared plus B squared equals C squared. A squared, 2.5 times 2.5 equals 6.25, plus B squared equals C squared. Well, C is 7, so 7 squared. Well, I already know that 7 times 7 is 49, so I'm going to go ahead and help myself. Well, that's what I don't know. Remember, from your algebra, you keep letters on one side, numbers on the other. So I'm going to subtract 6.25 to move it over here. So that's gone. And so B squared equals 49 minus 6.25. And that is 42.75. Square root of that, I can look for that answer, or I can put it on my calculator. Square root of 42.75 equals, it's about 6.5. 6.5 would be the answer that I would look for. This is how you use the Pythagorean theorem. In the next video, you're going to practice a couple on your own. Let's see how you do. Remember, use your calculator. It will help you get the answers. Good luck.